Thank you, Ms. Bright. That brings us to item number 11, which is our superintendent's report, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Board members, Mr. Gant, you alluded to earlier that next week is spring break for the faculty and staff and students, and I would just like to pause to say thank you to every staff member, every family member, and every student who've contributed to our success thus far this year. If Ms. Brown of Dr. Harris's department were here, she would say every day counts. So attendance is critically important, even the week leading up to a break. And we know that the staff and the students are ready for a break because we have captured some time as makeup time, but we are looking forward to this week being a very strong week and next week being a very restful week. I'd like to go back with our school board spotlight, if I may, because Ms. Cook did a lot to recognize the administrators, the coaches, the families, the students. But what we failed to say are thank you to the staff from the instructional department who've coordinated all of this. So if I may, I would like to say to those that are still here, our coordinator, Casey Cook, that was part of the presentation this evening, she stepped out already. Ms. Colleen Boysono, thank you, Colleen, for your coordination throughout the year and the celebration tonight. Ms. Judy Soltis may have stepped out already. She's an assistant in the department, and then Miss Mary White up here. Miss Wyatt has been a part of our success and the story of this. So the coordination for making sure trophies are prepared and scores are tabulated and checked more than twice, that accuracy can be relied upon. So thank you, and if you all would join me, let's give a round of applause to the Office of Instruction. And I certainly can't overlook our Chief of Instruction, Mr. Giuliano, who works to support all of their works. Mr. G, thank you for your support to make sure this annual tradition continues in School District 5, because I saw several wows throughout the comments that Mrs. Cook read this evening of the accolades that our students continue to earn and that we celebrate. We have two items for this evening from the Office of Communications, and I'd like to set, if I may, the first one, because this communication report is going to be something that we're going to try to make an annual commitment. I'm sure the community is aware, as is the board, this is a changing society of how we communicate. We can send out one-way messages, but unless it's received and understood, then we're really not practicing two-way communications. And this, of course, is connected with one of my 5 priorities that the board has approved for me this year. So the first report is going to be very information-rich that Ms. Goggins and her team have pulled together, inclusive of data and also inclusive of our efforts here in School District 5. And then the second one is more celebratory, so I'll put that one on pause to make sure we're ready for that one. So Ms. Goggins, you're here for number 1 to get us started, our communications report. Ms. Goggins.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. As Dr. Melton mentioned, one of her priorities for the school year is to strengthen the structure and quality of communication both internally and externally. So the purpose of this report tonight is threefold. One, to share with the board and the community some industry trends that have changed the way schools and district communicate. Then to provide data on how communication tools are performing for us as a district. And then with this information, we hope to demonstrate to you how School District 5 is using its data and tools to help tell the story of the district and brand the district. So I think it's important to start with a little context on media trends and how it's changed over the last couple of years. I'll tell you that when I started my journalism career as a reporter with my college newspaper, The Tiger, then later became a professional full-time journalist after graduation in the early 2000s, newspapers were still the way people wanted to receive their information. A lot of that started to change around 2004, 2006, which is the year that Facebook was founded, 2004, and then 2006, Twitter was founded. And while these are not the only catalysts, we start to see in those years the shift from print and long-form journalism to quick pace, I want my news now kind of format. So the first chart we wanted to show you is this change in weekly newspaper circulation, and it shows you the change percentage in Sunday circulation since 2004, when we have Facebook's introduction, to 2016. You don't see a lot of change in circulation. In fact, you see below 0. That means they're not getting new customers while the population is increasing. It's flat. That's never good for business. This next graph shows you how people want to consume their information today. So I know it's a little hard for people in the back to see, but you'll be able to follow along. That line at the top is online, including social media communications. That line that you see, that steep increase, that green line, is social media. We expect that to meet the online and TV in a few years. And then it's pink, but you may not be able to see it. Just, you'll see that decline, that's print media. And then that line right under the top line is our TV. And they've been able to kind of hold steady, but we're starting to see some changes, even in TV too. People want their news not at 6 o'clock, but they want it when it's convenient to them. So what does that mean for us? It means a few things. It means that, number one, print journalism has changed. The stories that the print journalists change is a little different now. It's geared towards how they get readers. TV journalists, we're finding it a little easier to tell positive stories, to get them to come to our schools and tell human interest type stories a lot more than print journalists. Newspaper rooms have shrunken considerably, and they're just not the journalists out there to tell stories. We're seeing a little bit of that even in broadcasts where you have backpack journalists. I heard about that in grad school around 2003. And that just means that you don't have an anchor and a photographer. You have one person doing it all. They're at the schools, they're filming the story, they're telling the story, and they're posting it, and it has to be fast. So how in-depth can you get when you have one person that has to do all of that? So I wanted to show this next slide because very recently I took a staff member with me to a seminar that the South Carolina School Boards, South Carolina Association of School Administrators was giving to districts and schools on how we can reach out to media outlets. One of the reports was from a newspaper journalist from the state newspaper. Another was from a broadcast journalist. And I think this is telling of the way newspapers are gearing and how they're focusing on what stories they tell. So PVs, you see that those two letters, that's page views. So the top story there is a human interest story, but the reporter let me know that that is not the norm. They don't tell a lot of human interest stories. They focus on 3 areas, the next 2 bullets. You'll see politics, crime, and sports. Why? Because those are getting the page views. And then that last bullet at the bottom, she said, is a story she wanted to tell. She convinced her editors, but you see, it only got 2,800 page views. So it's hard, she said, for her to convince her editor to come out. Those are the stories she tells when she has time to tell it. And then I later got an email from that reporter that she was leaving the newspaper and going into public relations. So another reporter who likes to tell human interest stories, gone from the industry, and that's a trend in and of itself too. So what are we doing? If we cannot get print media to tell our stories, we still have broadcasters, but that's becoming more difficult. Where do we focus our resources? We focus it on social media. A year ago, we started streamlining all of our platforms under the @LexRich5 Schools handle. And that lets people very easily find us on social media. So the next couple slides will show you how that's performing for us and some of the things that we're looking at in this area. So social media for us is comprised of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We started Instagram not too long ago. Our largest audience is definitely going to be Facebook, 5,872 followers. A lot of that has changed over the last 2 years. We've been able to increase that, and you'll see a chart that shows that in a little while. Then Twitter is second, and then Instagram. We're still working on some ways that we can engage, particularly the younger audience, with Instagram and Twitter. We are exploring LinkedIn, which is a site that a lot of businesses use to promote their businesses and post jobs. So we'll be looking at that with our Office of Human Resources this summer to see how we can utilize that to share that District 5 is a great place to work. And then Nextdoor is another social media site. You see a lot of communities using this to promote yard sales, or somebody's looking for a painter in the area. But you can apply as a business to post on Nextdoor as a business. We've already applied. We're waiting to hear back from Nextdoor to make sure we can get the community out, the information out to these community groups. A lot of realtors also use that, and we know that's a target group for us as well. So one of the ways that we've been able to increase our followers and just the traffic that we get on social media is through hashtags and campaigns. One of the hashtags we use is Lexridge 5 Schools, and it compiles all the schools together. We have met with our social media leads annually and asked them to share this hashtag so that that drives people to our site. We drive people to school sites, vice versa. And then Pride in 5 is a hashtag that our superintendent started. It is widely popular. I think the superintendent for the Department of Education for the state even used the hashtag. So we have seen a lot of traffic just on this one hashtag. And then when you see the word campaigns, that just means Teach in 5, D5 every day, D5 reads. These are hashtags we use to push out a lot of information under one concise hashtag, and that's worked well for us as well. We monitor social media, and we look at our analytics. So on social media, we get questions, and we make sure that we answer those or if it's appropriate to do so. More times than not, when we get a question on social media, we try to take that individual off social, offline, and just connect them with somebody at the district office who can have a real engaging conversation with them. But we are answering questions when we need to. Then we look at all the analytics we just shared and some others I'll share with you. We also use bit.ly links, and those are just links that are shortened, but we can tell how many people click those links. We put them on social media. They drive people to our district page, and that's integrated communications. We don't want them just on social media, just on the website, but we want them to go from one platform to the next. All right? So this chart shows you our followers from January 2018. You can see that we continue to trend upwards. And we know that's because of the tremendous amount of videos that we put out, some of the graphics that we're using, and some of the things we've been watching and doing on social media. This shows you how other districts in our area kind of compare with District 5. We know that they have been doing it a lot longer. Some of them have larger populations than us, and some of them may or may not be using social media advertisement. And if you're not familiar with that, if you are on social media, sometimes you will get sponsored ads just pop up in your feed. Well, social media, every time you're on a site, is collecting information on things you like, and they use that and they sell that through ads. So other districts might be using that. We have not delved into that, but I do have a staff member who's getting trained on how we can utilize that if we need to. So we're very competitive in we're hoping we're #1 very soon. You can see if you look at that right side, engagement is higher than any other district. And we are getting followers at a quicker pace than the other districts too. So we expect to kind of meet them at some point and even surpass some of the districts that are doing other things in terms of social media. So here are some examples of the hashtags we've used and some of the posts that have gotten good engagement with the hashtags. We have Teach in 5. That first one about the Chapin Middle School SIC got good engagement. We used the Pride in 5 hashtag there. And we have the attendance, and we have also the teacher choice hashtag there. So let's look at the website's media and public relations for a minute. So School District 5's website is a template that we get from a company called Blackboard Connect. We've been using this for several years, and we last updated it in 2016. Some of the features of that website include online, on-screen alerts, so that if there's an emergency, we put it on the website. As soon as somebody visits the website, they see that on-screen alert. We have a home screen tab, and if you look up there to the top of that image, you see the elementary school 13 tab. That's just a quick and easy way that people can get information. And then the multimedia rotators, that image that changes, we try to make the site dynamic. It's a template. It's not easy to do that, but we do that through flashy graphics that we rotate in and rotate out. And then we have department pages, school pages that we watch, and we have software that makes sure that we are within compliance with all of our pages as well. So here's a graph that shows you traffic on our website. You see we've almost had 500,000 people on our sites this school year since July 2018. And as you might expect, we saw a huge peak at the beginning of the school year. This makes perfect sense. As people become acclimated there during winter break, we see traffic on the website starts to drop, and then we have new people come in January, we see a peak again, and people are trying to get reacclimated to school, and we see it start to even out as we go into spring break and the end of the school year as well. Public relations. We use events and also campaigns and marketing materials to try to get information out to the community and share with them what a great place District 5 is. So the Office of Communication leads the back-to-school kickoff, our community involvement event, which is later this week, and also the school board meeting. We help kind of organize that. We do fill and track FOI requests each year, and you can see for the years that we have, we're trending upward. We don't have this school year because we're not done, but it's very close to in between 2016-17 and 17-18 already. And then we have annual campaigns, the Magnet Fair. We do campaigns to make sure people know about that event, teacher recruitment event, the 5K and 4K registration. We also handle volunteer apps. We have a copy imaging department and communication, and we handle mailroom and deliveries. And then in the way of community relations, many of our staff members in the Office of Communication give monthly, weekly, and whenever we're requested to, presentations to groups. So on Wednesday of this week, we'll go to the Irmo Chamber. We share celebrations from the district at those events. Our superintendent definitely also goes to some of these events and speaks to these groups, as well as all staff members in the district office. Media relations. We average about 180 press releases each year. We're at 124 right now, so we expect to meet or exceed what we've done in years prior. Press releases are important because they are not just on our website. We use those on social media, and very often some of our weekly newspapers will pick that up and go ahead and publish those press releases for us. We have about 80 broadcast TV stories per year, and then the print stories, we're about 20. A lot of those are sports. And then the weekly newspapers really pick up our press releases, so we're at 418 already this school year. Here are some examples of some of the stories, some of the events we've had in the district that we have been able to get media to come to. This one, the CHOP competition, is well attended every year, and we had both WLTX and ABC Columbia come out to that event. All 4 broadcast news stations attended the military homecoming surprise at Chapin Elementary School in October, so they're still telling those positive stories. And then we get our teachers featured on WLTX Teacher of the Week. Those are through nominations that schools send in about teachers. And then we want you to know that every time we have a media outlet on site, we have a communication staff person there that goes out, prepares our staff, and then we are also there to try to make relationships with the reporters and anchors when they are there. All right, we'll quickly talk about some other tools. We did rebrand our logo this school year. In 2006, the D and 5 logo created by a teacher was implemented across the district, and then in 2016, we had a color change from red and green to gold and platinum. In 2018, 2019, Dr. Melton charged us with refreshing and modernizing our logo, and that's the badge logo that you see there before you. And then this year, we started to kind of track our logo a little better than we had before to protect it and make sure the brand was strong. Video, as I said before, helped us tremendously. We do training videos, we do some public videos, and then we do our school board videos. So far this year, not counting the school board videos, we've done 112, just on staff and accomplishments in the district. We post those on YouTube, social media, and the website, and they help us get engagement. In addition to video, we do e-blasts every week. We send that to our staff, and we send that to more than 250 people outside of staff every week. And we're looking at some ways to get it to even more people, but right now, the Gmail account that we have only lets us send it to a set amount. And then we send out staff e-blasts if we have emergencies, active scams, or quick announcements that we would like to make to our internal audience. And then the last thing we wanted to share is a little bit of information about crisis communication. Obviously, in situations like this, we're working very closely with our law enforcement partners. I can tell you, being a journalist now in this role and as the wife of a long-time police officer, it's important that you don't jump ahead of an investigation and you're sharing only what you can when you can. When we're ready to communicate, we use our automated phone blast, text blast, and e-blast system. Earlier this year, we shared with our parents on when we send a phone blast, that's going to be an active emergency, when we send a text, and when we send an e-blast. Those are just informational. Generally, if there's an active emergency, it's going to be a phone blast because we want people to pay attention and act quickly. And then some of the information we share through these means are reminders, information, school closures, active emergencies again. And the graph just shows you when we had the most emergencies go out. That's right around the time that we had the hurricanes. So we sent out those e-blasts to let our parents know that we had closures. So we do want you to connect with us because this is one of our strong tools. I wanted to acknowledge some of the folks in communication who are here tonight. Barrett Isbell. Please stand. Barrett handles and helps us monitor our website. And then Courtney Morabito helps with graphics. She also is our social media lead. And we have Sharon who helps with events and Laura McElveen who helps with media when they are on site. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. Goggins, before we ask you questions, could we ask those people to stand up again? And I'd like to ask the board, let's give them a big hand because you all do a great job. Now, questions from the board? Mr. Lovelace.
Is this on?
Is the green light on?
Is it on? Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Goggins, at one of the board meetings prior to the 2018 election, it was cited that the FOIA requests, the reason for changing the policy was expense. And I noticed one of your slides in here had something to do with FOIA.
Mm-hmm. Changing the FOIA policy? FOIA is a law, so we can't change FOIA.
Well, we changed the policy about how we would respond.
We changed policy BEDH, public participation, is what
Right.
we changed, but not the FOIA.
Well, we changed the policy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the point. The policy was changed, and it was cited that the expense of having to do it in the prior method was much greater than it is now. And I noticed that the number of FOIA requests, I believe, went down, didn't it?
And I failed to also mention that when you see this number, it can be misleading. I'm trying to find that slide for you, Mr. Lovelace. So while 2017-18 shows 40, what we've been seeing is people are filing one email or sending one email, but you might have 5 different requests for documents under that. So I'd be happy to go back through that. These are just what we've logged based on a letter that we've received or one email. But even this year, one request, I counted and looked at this last night, had 8 different requests for 8 different documents. So these are not simple one question, one document type of requests. So the number you see there might be misleading. In terms of expense of FOIA, we do monitor, we do kind of track the costs, but it doesn't always accurately show how much a FOIA request would cost. Let's say that we had a personnel file. For example, the state newspaper requested one. Well, we have to partner with our attorneys to find out what we need to redact. You might have very private information you don't want to pass over. We hand that over to attorney. We'll never recoup that cost. And the FOIA law also requires that we charge the least paid employee. So it wouldn't be the attorney, it's going to be, and many times, it's the administrative person who could have done the work for us. So we have a cost. I can probably go back and give you a figure, but it's never going to recoup all of the costs. It costs the district to do a FOIA request. Did I answer that for you?
Well, so there's 155 or so requests in over 3 years, FOIA requests. And it was cited that the policy was changed because of the expense of the FOIA request. And that was the supposition upon which it was passed because I attended the meeting and I understood it. Okay, so why, how much are we spending to respond to FOIA requests that are not paid for by these FOIA requests are paid for by the individual requesting usually?
I think there's some confusion. So BEDH is public participation. We respond to those questions that are submitted. That's the policy, unless I'm mistaken, that we changed. We don't charge for that. I do not recall us changing that policy because of FOIA expenses, but I'd be happy to go back and look at
Both
that.
of those items were discussed in the meeting, and it was cited that if the board if a board member decided that a person in public participation were to, his questions were to have merit, then they would be, the question would be answered. And my question to you, that was cited in here, that we changed our policy based on the expense, and I want to know how much that it is costing this district to answer for you.
Mr. Gant.
Can you answer that, or I'll go with Mr. White?
I can answer that. The and I defer to the board as well. So what we did in that policy is make sure if we can provide a document that we can recoup that cost. So that was the change we made, so that if we can treat it as a FOIA request, we do.
Mr. Lovelace, if I recall, the change that took place, the FOIA law changed. And we, as we do so often with policy, we got our policy in compliance with the law. So that's what brought that change. But Mr. White, I'll come to you, and then Mr. Cates.
Yeah, I was going to add, Mr. Gant, that the question of how much that cost is probably more appropriate for our budget session. But I can tell you, my own recollection is that it's a significant cost of FTEs for y'all to spend, and while the law changes, everything costs money. And so we have to deal with that. But I'm not sure if you're equipped to have numbers, but I'm sure Lynn, when we do budget, can highlight what we spend, or hopefully you can, because I remember Dr. Hefner said it was not only a substantial cost for us, there was a national trend where government bodies were having to wrestle with increasing FOIA costs. That's great to say, I want information, but on the other side of it, when you're on this side of the table, it costs real money, and it costs real time, and it is a burden. And I don't think it was insubstantial. I think it was very significant. But I think we ought to bring that into our budget conversation.
Mr. Cates.
Ms. Goggins, I think during the time that we looked at BEDH was about the time FOIA was changing. I don't remember the cost of FOIA being the driver in the change of that policy. Is there a prescribed method for someone to make a FOIA request? There's not a specific form. It could be oral, it could be an email, it could be someone actually put a stamp on an envelope and send it, they could come by the office and make that request. Is that accurate? Is that statement accurate?
That's accurate.
And so, as we looked at BEDH, my recollection of that, having been on the board at that time, is that one of the concerns with our public participation policy is that we could have an inadvertently, we could have a FOIA request that we had not responded to appropriately because it was asked during public participation and would not be logged as we would typically log FOIA. Is that,
That's
was
correct.
that part of that process from your?
That's correct.
And also, as a part of that, that there is some way for us to track when those questions are received, whether we responded to them, and when we responded, and those responses are posted publicly. Is that, am I?
That's accurate, all that is accurate.
So there was more than one factor in looking at BEDH. And I don't want this conversation to distract from the outstanding job that's being done. I have felt like since my privilege to serve on the board, and I think you and I came on about the same time, the district is doing an exceptional job of telling the story of the district versus reacting to the events within the district. And I just want to publicly say thank you. And again, thank you to your staff for leading us. Our students are exceptional, and they deserve to be highlighted in everything we do.
Absolutely.
Ms. Hammond?
I have a question. Since this is so digital, and this, I agree that this is the way that we can reach more people, and I would think this probably saves us money in paper or in time in your office that you gather all this. Do you feel like, or do you think it takes just as much time?
It still takes time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Probably,
ma'am.
probably not a change off in time, but it's more relevant to the public now. I mean, it's the way digital is the way that more people are going to find the information. But I have a question. When we have the public participation questions, are they all done on this digital, or do we send them a hard copy? How are they answered?
Well, it depends on how that person has indicated they want their responses. So I'll give you an example, very recent one. That individual had both their email address and a mailing address, so we sent it to both because we want the individual to get their responses. So it depends on how they would like to be communicated with.
You make the assumption from, like you're saying, if it's an email, you send it back in the email. if
Yes,
it's something
ma'am,
like
right. Or if they've included an email and a written response, that to me says it might be quicker, it might be easier for them to get it on email. If they provide me with both a physical address and an email, I'll send it back to both.
Refresh me though, and when we did, what's our time frame? Is it 3 weeks?
For
To be-
public
to-
participation?
Yeah, a question you get in the public.
So per our policy now, it follows the FOI timeline, which is 10 business days. Unless the file or what they're seeking is older than 2 years, and then it might take a little bit more time. We think it takes a little bit more time. We usually communicate to them and let them know that it'll take a little bit more time.
Ms. Hutchison?
I want to thank you for your great leadership of the Communications Department, Ms. Goggins. This is really impressive, and also thank the staff for their hard work. I mean, I knew you did a lot, but seeing it in this report, I'm so glad that the superintendent chose to make this part of her presentation. I think it's important for us to realize how much information that your office is sharing with the public. You know, vital information, good stories, which I think is vital, but handling these events. And I also know that FOIA requests take a great deal of time. So I am truly amazed at how much you're able to accomplish in that office. And I just want to share that with you. And this has been so informative it's great information to have, and I think it's, I'm glad it's out there, I'm glad it's online, so if anyone wants to look at it, then they can certainly see what a terrific job our communications staff is doing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Goggins, that's one of the reasons I wanted your staff to stand up, other than, I believe, one person who maybe left. That's your staff. I don't know how you all do this, and I've seen some of the back and forth and the complications of some of the requests. I don't want us to lose sight in this district, though. Our schools get calls daily with questions they have. They don't have to put it in writing. They can usually pick up the telephone and call. And I know our district office gets a lot of calls. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of answers given, and people usually get that answer and move on to the next step. But I too am awed at the work that goes on and the evolution of our public relations office, and I want to thank you for leading that office. And I thank you for this report tonight. It was wonderful, very good. Any other questions for the board? Thank you so much.
Mr. Gann, if I may, Ms. Goggins, would you advance to the last slide, please? Because as Collins would say, let's begin with the end in mind. And where we began tonight is a report of communications of how we are telling our story in an age of digital media. Ms. Goggins is quick to place the spotlight on others, but she does not like the spotlight on herself. But I have the opportunity, so Ms. Goggins, I'm going to enjoy it for a moment. Your experience as a journalist, your vision, your deliberate behavior to research and make sure we are relevant, to reach those that are engaged with social media and those that are not, continue to take this district to new heights. So although we recognize your staff earlier who's following your vision, it is important that we recognize your leadership and your vision, your skill set, because I assure you, you indeed are making an impact. As John Hattie would say, know thy impact. Ms. Goggins, you are making one. So thank you for your responsive leadership to what research says. And I also have to pause to say, I hope everyone noticed how data-driven this report was. So Ms. Goggins, we appreciate your leadership, and I would encourage everyone, let's offer a round of applause for Ms. Goggins. And then I can't neglect to say, to have an operational social media, we have to have a healthy, robust technology infrastructure. So Mr. Richardson, thank you, and Ms. Garris, because we are there now. Watch tomorrow things be down, so hopefully I didn't just jinx us this evening. But we can now rely on a system that is operational, which allows us to have this new focus of how we communicate with our community. So Mr. Gant, with your permission, I'll move to the second item, which I'm trying to make sure I don't infringe on any copyright nor trademarks, but I had the first experience of feeling like Publishers Clearinghouse by going around to announce our finalists for Honor Roll Teacher of the Year, most recently just last Friday, I think it was, Thursday or Friday, Support Employees of the Year Honor Roll finalists. So tonight, our second item in the Superintendent's report, Ms. Goggins will also lead regarding our finalists for the Teacher of the Year Honor Roll for this school year. Ms. Goggins.
In our report, we share the importance of video and capturing the great things that happen in our classroom, the people in our district, and telling our story. With that knowledge, we decided to do things a little differently announcing our finalists for the District Teacher of the Year this year. Our superintendent, Dr. Melton, who is so great at relationship building and connections, visited the schools of our finalists. So let's watch a video now and take a look at what that was like for these extraordinary teachers.
I'm here today to say congratulations to Ms. Rogers because she's the Teacher of the Year for Irma Elementary, and now she's one of our 3 Teachers of the Year to compete with the District 5 Teacher of the Year award. Congratulations, Ms. Rogers.
I am absolutely ecstatic and shocked and just so excited and honored to be chosen as one of the finalists for District 5 Teacher of the Year.
Erin is really the whole package. She's a team player, she's a leader, and most importantly, she always puts students first. Every student in her classroom loves being there all day, every day.
Oh my gosh, I want to say congratulations to our newest teacher who's been identified as an honor roll teacher of School District 5. Ms. Bell is one of 3 District Teacher of the Year. Congratulations!
I'm a little bit shocked because this is my 11th year working in the district, and I've gotten to know so many of the other teachers, and they're some of the most incredible people that I know. So just the fact that anybody would think I was worthy of being recognized with any of them, or even in the top 3 to represent them, is very humbling, and I'm very excited and feel very flattered.
Miss Jessica Bauer is a phenomenal teacher. I am so happy for her and so proud of her. She's so deserving of this award, and as you can see, our students, our staff, everybody is just so excited for Miss Bauer. She's an awesome teacher.
Congratulations, Mrs. Gaines, for being a finalist for Teacher of the Year for District 5. You are an honor roll Teacher of the Year, which means the top 3, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations.
I'm really overwhelmed. It was already just an amazing experience to represent Spring Hill, which in my humble opinion has the best teachers in the world already working here, and so to be representing them as their Teacher of the Year was just already such an honor.
Miss Gams is just a wonderful teacher, and so she is one that connects with kids all the time, challenges them academically, socially. She is always pushing their intellect, but it does represent all the hard work that our teachers do here at Spring Hill, and she's just one wonderful, wonderful team member.
Congratulations to every school's Teacher of the Year. Today we had the opportunity to announce 3 honor roll recipients, and having the opportunity to present each teacher individually was just an exciting and memorable day for me, and I hope that it was just as memorable for them and the staff at each of the 3 schools we visited today. Congratulations to everyone for the next phase of the competition.
So we will announce our District Teacher of the Year at our employee recognition event on May 6th. While we will have just one extraordinary teacher represent the district, this award really helps us thank all of our teachers district-wide that do so much for our students and our families. Dr. Melton, they give us hashtag
That's right.
Pride and Five. Thank you.
Mr. Gant, that completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. That was a great report. That brings us to item number 12, which is our public participation.